They sat in the front pew every Sunday, hymn books open, heads bowed, their voices rising in perfect harmony. The Holloway family of Kentucky were the picture of devotion, farmers who prayed before meals, donated to the poor, and never missed a single church service. But behind their piety lay something unspeakable, because inside their farmhouse, beneath the wooden floors, was a basement that neighbors whispered about. People went in, but they never came out. The Holloways were everything a community was supposed to admire. Jonathan and Margaret, the parents, raised their children with strict discipline, but also with Scripture always on their lips. Their farm, nestled in rolling fields of corn and tobacco, was modest but prosperous. They gave food to neighbors in need. They led prayers at gatherings, and on Sundays they were always the first to arrive at the small white-steepled church at the heart of their town. In 1883, Kentucky was a patchwork of farming communities, bound together by faith and survival. Life was harsh. Crops failed, illnesses spread, poverty was common. In a world like that, the Holloways shone as an example of righteousness. Or so it seemed, because beneath the praise there were whispers. Some neighbors spoke of strange sounds at night, a low thudding carried on the wind. Others noticed travelers passing near the Holloway farm who were never seen again. Still, few dared question them openly. Who would suspect such a godly family? Who would accuse those who sat each week with open Bibles, singing louder than anyone else? But unease was growing. Life in Kentucky in the late 19th century was built on trust. Neighbors knew each other's habits, each other's children. People noticed when things didn't add up. The Holloways' farm, for all its supposed prosperity, never seemed to sell as much as they claimed to produce. Yet the family always had plenty of food, new clothes, even luxuries others could not afford. And then there were the missing travelers, peddlers, farmhands, even the occasional drifter, people seen walking the dirt road near the Holloways' land, people who never reached the next town. Some were brushed off as runaways, others as accidents. But in the tight-knit community, the number was too many to ignore. Children whispered about the Holloway farmhouse, its shutters always drawn tight, its lantern glowing long past midnight, and the basement, always locked, always off-limits. One hired hand, who worked a season for the Holloways, swore he heard muffled cries beneath the floorboards. When he asked about them, Margaret Holloway placed a hand on his shoulder and smiled. The Lord works in mysterious ways. He left that very night and never returned. But the community, bound by politeness and fear of scandal, looked the other way, until the day they could no longer ignore it. It began with a smell. In the summer of 1883, as the heat pressed down on the valley, a foul odor spread from the Holloway farm. Neighbors complained of rot in the air, of a stench like death carried by the wind. The Holloways claimed it was a hog gone bad, buried in the earth. But the smell lingered. Then came the disappearance of a young girl, only 12 years old, last seen walking home from church. She never arrived. Her bonnet was found near the Holloway fence line. The town had had enough. A group of men, led by the pastor himself, went to the Holloway farm under the pretense of a friendly visit. They were welcomed in, offered tea, Scripture quoted freely, the family smiling as though nothing were amiss. But one man, uneasy, asked about the smell. Jonathan Holloway bristled. Margaret insisted they leave. And it was then, as they were being ushered out, that one of the men noticed something, a trapdoor beneath a rug in the kitchen. The rug had shifted, revealing the iron ring of a handle. The men exchanged glances. Their suspicions had found a target. What they uncovered when they forced open that basement door would haunt Kentucky for generations. The trapdoor creaked open, releasing a gust of air so putrid that several men gagged. Lanterns were lowered, their light spilling down into darkness. What it revealed was not the storage cellar one might expect, but something far worse. The basement was larger than the house itself, dug deep into the earth. Along its walls were chains, iron cuffs still locked, some with scraps of cloth attached. In the center, a crude wooden table stained dark with what could only be blood. Tools lay scattered around it, not tools of farming, but of cutting. And in the shadows, the truth: bodies. Some decomposed beyond recognition, others fresher, their faces pale and frozen in terror. Men, women, even children, all victims of the Holloway family. The men who had opened the trap door stumbled back, choking on bile, crossing themselves in horror. The pastor dropped to his knees, praying aloud, his voice shaking. The Holloways did not run. They stood calmly as the townsfolk confronted them. Jonathan Holloway spoke in a steady voice. "The Lord asked for sacrifice, and we delivered." Margaret's eyes were said to be cold as stone. She muttered scripture, twisting verses into justification for the horror below. And the children, the Holloway sons and daughters, stood silently, their expressions blank, as if they too had been raised to believe this was righteousness. The godly family, the ones who never missed church, had turned their basement into a chamber of death. The aftermath shook the town to its core. The Holloways were arrested, dragged from their home as crowds gathered, shouting, spitting, some demanding immediate vengeance. The sheriff struggled to hold the mob back from lynching the family on the spot. The basement was emptied, the bodies counted. Reports differ on how many victims were found. Some say a dozen, others claim dozens more. Records from the time are fragmented, perhaps deliberately buried, the shame too great for the community to endure. At trial, the Holloways gave little defense. Jonathan repeated that God demanded sacrifice. Margaret refused to speak, her lips pressed into a thin line of defiance. The children, some old enough to understand, admitted only what they had been taught, that the basement was holy work. The verdict was swift: guilty. Jonathan and Margaret Holloway were executed by hanging. Their children were dispersed, some taken in by relatives, others placed into asylums. The farmhouse was burned to the ground. The basement collapsed, as if the town hoped fire could erase the memory. But memory cannot be erased so easily. For years after, travelers passing through that valley spoke of strange things, of lights flickering where the farmhouse once stood, of cries in the night carried on the wind. Farmers swore that crops would not grow where the basement had been, the soil poisoned by blood. And in the church that the Holloways had once filled with song, the front pew sat empty, a silent reminder of the family who had prayed louder than anyone else, all while hiding their horrors below ground. Historians debate the details today. Some dismiss the Holloway story as folklore, exaggerated by fear and gossip. Others insist the fragments of records, trial notes, old newspaper clippings, eyewitness testimonies are proof enough. Whether legend or truth, the Holloways remain one of Kentucky's darkest tales, a reminder that evil can hide behind hymns, that even the most devout appearances may mask the most grotesque secrets. This was the Holloway family's story, the farmers who never missed church, but whose basement swallowed lives. It forces us to ask, how well do we really know our neighbors? How many smiles hide something darker? And how often has history buried the truth because it was too horrifying to face? The Holloways are gone, their house reduced to ash. But the legend lives on, whispered in Kentucky to this day: beware the family who seems too perfect, because you may never know what waits beneath their floor. This was the Holloway family's story, but many more dark tales remain buried in history. If you want more hidden stories, watch this playlist here, and don't forget to subscribe, so you never miss the stories history tried to erase.